Hi, Stefan the BMW DIY guy. My project today is the AvinUSA Avant 3 for the E46 M3. I'm partnering with Avin on this, and what a cool project. I've worked with them over a number of years. I've seen previous generations of technology that they've put out, especially the Avant 2, which was in a different E46 M3 than the one we're installing in today. And it's really cool to see how they've continued to progress forward, improve their technology, improve their products. And this is a fantastic upgrade into your car, especially if you've got the business CD or even the OEM navigation, which by now is really badly out of date. This puts touchscreen, Wi-Fi, cellular connectivity, navigation, all the things that you would want into your system, including other integration points like TPMS systems for tire pressure monitoring. You can put a backup camera, forward-facing camera, all of the things that you'd want for modern technology into your car. And the install really isn't that hard. I'll have all my tools listed that I'll use today listed below, but you really only need a screwdriver, plastic trim tool's pretty nice, flashlight, good lighting, that sort of thing, but it really isn't that hard. It may look complicated as we go through it, but if you really take it a step at a time, it's really easy to walk through and get done. So let's go out to the garage and get started. Okay, so out in the car, and your setup is going to be a little bit different than mine. I just want to point that out, but I'll definitely walk you through what to do. Obviously, the existing head unit is out. So the stereo is out in this car right at the moment. So, you know, pulling the head unit out and unplugging it, I've done it so many times, I can easily walk you through on what you need to do. So don't worry about the fact that it's missing right at this point. It's been out for a couple of different reasons for a little bit, but that's why it's out. So one of the very first things you're going to need to do is pull these two pieces of trim. You got to pull the side piece of trim here, which goes all the way across above your glove box, and this piece here. They're secured by a series of pins that push down into the dash. So this is where you really want to use a plastic trim tool. It really is one of the best options. You can either start at the far end or at this end here, get underneath it, gently pry up with your plastic trim tool to pull those pins up and away from the dash, and then just work your way down the trim piece, and they'll just slowly pop out. Now these pins, they look like aluminum pins, stick into these clips, and what very frequently will happen, and as you can see exactly what happened in this case, the clips will pull out too. So I've actually ordered these several times and reordered these clips because they break. I don't know if they're intended to be used more than once or come out more than once, and they very frequently will break. So you can back these back off, insert the clips back into your dash. They insert in and twist to secure, and then these pins will be secure when they go in. It's not a bad idea. I'll have the part number for those little clips in the comments of the video. So once that piece is off, this piece will come off as well. So now it's loose on this side. This side will be loose, and then there's another pin on this side. Again, use your plastic trim tool, get underneath, gently pry up. It is possible to break this trim piece. I've seen it done. Thankfully, I've never broken mine, but I've definitely seen them broken. So you want to pull up and away to get this trim piece out. Yep, and so that one came out as well. So we're good to go. So now, if you had your head unit, so your head unit would be here, and it would be secured. You take out these two screws to pull the vents, and then there's screws here, and they pull out as well. So once you pull the vents out, and the vents are easy to pull out. So again, imagine your stock OEM stereo sitting here. What you'd want to do is pull these two screws, and then your vents will come out. When these screws come out, your head unit will come out. Once your head unit and your stereo is out, you'll see you've got a big clip on the back of the stereo, and you'll undo the horse collar on that and pull it off, and it'll come out. So let me show you how to do that here in just a second, and I'll take the vents out, and then I'll show you the next steps. So I've taken the vents out, so I've got lots of extra space because we have to make a series of decisions of where to put all the different antennas, both radio antenna, GPS antenna, and where to run all of my extra cables. So as I look at this, and this vent comes out really easily, so when you pull the vent out, there's a horseshoe clip that holds this orange piece down. You pull that clip off. I just used a pair of needle nose pliers, pulled that off, and then you can gently spread. This fits into a little clip. You can gently spread it and then pull this out. So I can pull the vents out and have them completely out of the way so I can have more space to work with. Now, a couple of things when you look at your wiring harness, there's a couple of different styles of the wiring harness. So when you look at this, this is what I would call a little bit of one of the older styles of the wiring harnesses. So it's the big round posts, or round plugs in this case. So when you pull out your Avin 3, there is 2 different adapters that will go onto this, and only one will fit. So it's really not hard to pick the right one. You'll just have to pick the right one. So if you initially pick this out and you pull the adapter out and it's the pin style, that's okay. Go looking for the other, because it'll go here. So I've got the head unit out and I've got all my cabling pulled up and out of the way. Like I said, I've got the older style connector at this point, and I got a lot of space to work with. And so now I want to decide where I want to run everything. In general, I try to have my installations as clean as possible. So with the external DVD drive, I'm going to have over in the glove box, and I'm going to route the cabling through the dash and out into the glove box. I'm also going to want my extra connections there as well. So I'm going to route my USB cables that direction. And then my antenna, I'm going to put the GPS antenna back on the pipe, steel pipe back here where I've put it before with the Avin 2. I put it there. And then the other antennas are other places where you can go. And there's lots of void space you can get into up in here in your dash. So it really wouldn't be that hard, depending on reception. Now, you may also be able to just lay them back here on this on the shelf that sits back here in this internal substructure, because this is all going to be open space now. But your main concerns and things you want to look at is making sure that you've got good signal reception for your GPS and for all of your antennas. So before you put the head unit in, before you put anything else in, you want to get your cables laid out. So go through your box that you've pulled out for the Avin 3 and decide what you're going to use. When you look at it, there's a lot of additional cabling there. And if you're not going to use it, don't plug it in. I would just keep it off to the side. So for example, there's a bunch of video ins and other connections. There's also the microphone as well. Now, a lot of people are probably going to want to use the microphone. I'm not going to use it, but you can really decide on where you want to put it, because to have it routing that external microphone really is a matter of personal choice. You could route it very visibly, here, and having it sit off to the side of your vents. Or you could do the long run and run it all the way up into your headliner and have it sit up here in your headliner, which if I was going to do it, that's what I would probably do. Now, this is a coupe, so it's got a sunroof. I'd probably route it all the way up here into the panel where the button for the sunroof is, if I was going to do it. I've decided that's not a function that matters for me to plug in. So I'm not going to, that's the one thing I'm not going to show with all this is where to install the microphone, because that's up to you. So now you're going to want to do is lay all this stuff out. So I'm going to pull all my cabling out and start to get the layout set up. I'm going to show how I'm going to route them through the glove box and how to set them all up in here. All right, so I'm over here on the passenger side of the car, and I've pulled out all of the cables that I want to run. So there's a couple of different choices here on everything that you want to run, but what I really want is I want to have all of the USB adapters, with the exception of one, which I'll cover just back in a second, over here. I'm going to have the DVD drive plugged into here. I'm going to have the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto adapter plugged in over here, which will also leave a spare USB plug over here. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to reserve one USB plug and keep it back here over here in the stereo space, because what you have here, this adapter or this reader, this is actually a SIM reader, and you'll need a standard sized SIM card. So not a micro or a mini, but a standard size SIM card. So you can have cellular connectivity, data connectivity to your deck full time if you have a SIM card. There's a bunch of different options of what you can do there. But this is going to be over, I'm going to keep this over in the stereo space back behind the head unit. So I'm going to keep that over there. This is going to need to be plugged in over there, plus one of the USB cables on this side. You want to reserve one of the USB cords on this side, because on your main wiring harness, you'll see that there is a USB plug. This USB plug on your main wiring harness, which I've got the adapter plus the extra other half of the wiring harness. You can see this USB, this will need to go into one of your free USB plugs, and I'm going to keep that also on the stereo side. So I'm going to run everything else over to this side of the glove box. Now, what you can do is if you take a flashlight and you can put it up here, and you can see between your fuse box here in the roof of your glove box, you can see into the void space back behind. If you use a flashlight, if you stick your head over to where your stereo was, you can see it, and you can see how to feed those cables. So what I've done is I've grabbed all of my cables and I'm going to feed them in. I'm going to feed them in on the side, feed them up and in and over. I'm going to reach in, grab them, and pull them and feed them through to leave what should be, I believe, 3 of my USB cables coming out on this side, so I can get to them all, and I have everything that I'm going to want to have on this side. Because I've got one USB here, I've got another here, and I've got the rest coming out over there. So we should be good to go there. I'm going to run all of those cables, and we'll show you what's next after that. But the big thing is, like I said, the main stress in all of this is cable management. As you go through all of this, is where and how you're going to run all of your cabling, and do that first. This install is really not hard. It's just a matter of just kind of being methodical about it. All right, so I'm going to run all my cables and I'll show you what I've done. So I've run my 2 cables. So correction, I think I might have said there are 3 additional USB. There's actually are 2. I've run them both, and it really wasn't that hard. Once I'm back on this side and I'm shining the flashlight into this space, and I could reach over and I could feed the cable up, and you could see the cable end come up and through. You can see the plug come through, and you just feed it through until you can grab it and you pull it through. So now these 2 are through. I've got my original wiring harness here. I've taken the correct adapter for my wiring harness, and as you can see, there's lots and lots and lots of extra connections here. You're not going to use these unless you have some of the additional options, or depending on how your car is set up. I mean, if you've had this plug cut off and you have all kinds of custom or aftermarket speakers and setup in your car, it's going to be different, and I can't answer those questions, but I can show you what it looks like with the factory setup. So we've got our wiring harness here. We've got the correct adapter for it here. I've plugged it into the connection here, and this section allows you to swap out whatever end you need for whatever of the wiring harnesses you have. Some are pin posts, some are round. And then here's that additional USB connection I was telling you about, and that's going to plug in, and I'm going to use one of your cables is a dedicated USB cable. You can tell by the plug, and this goes on the back of the new head unit, and this is what I'm going to use for this connection. You know, it probably doesn't matter which one you use, but to me it makes the most sense to use the one that's dedicated and not tied into anything else. So now I've got all of this laid out. As you can see, I'm trying to make as much space as I can to work with. So now really all that is going to remain is where I put my antennas. So I've got 3 different antennas. They're the same flat antennas. They're going to be for the 4G connection and everything else. When you look at the back of the head unit, you can see Wi-Fi, 4G plus 4G on the back. The GPS antenna is round, is kind of a square but rounded off corner little box. So that's where the GPS is going to go. These 3 are all the same. They go for Wi-Fi, 4G, 4G plus. So I'm going to want to make sure to get these set into good places. Now, like I also mentioned earlier, you've got your SIM reader here as well, and this can be bundled up really nice and neatly. And I'm going to put this, back and into this void space as well. Now, as far as the back of your display is concerned, when you look at it, it's a lot of cables and a lot of plugs, right? Well, don't worry about it, because all of them go really only in one place. Your primary cable's going to go here. All the rest are all pinned out all the same, depending on which plug you put in. So it really isn't a big deal. You can see your antenna plug here. This is that USB plug that I was mentioning earlier. So your original factory antenna, you can see will plug in here. So really, we're really more than halfway done. All we need to do now is just good cable management and get our antennas installed. And like I said, here's the GPS antenna, so why don't we go ahead and start with that. So we'll pull this out. Now, your GPS antenna can be very sensitive depending on where you put it. I've never really had a big problem with my GPS antenna being attached to the metal structural pipe right here. Now, there's some adhesive on this, and you can pull the backing off the adhesive, but put it someplace where you're confident you're going to get a good signal, good reception. I've never really had a problem with GPS reception. I definitely have spoken to some people who have, and I don't know whether it's just maybe good luck on my part or bad placement on their part, but all in all, it works out pretty well. And you're going to want to make the same decision with these other antenna. So you've got 3 different antenna, also with adhesive, all with these same screw-in connectors. So I'm going to hang all of my antennas now. Now, keep in mind you've got your vents here, so you don't want anything going through this space. So you're going to want to have them on either side of the vents, or up in the open space up on the other side over here. There's a lot of this undersurface you can get to right here. So I'm going to be putting my antennas up here and up here so they have the least amount of obstruction to be seen through the top of the dash or get signal through the top of the dash. So I'm going to hang all of my antennas. And then at that point, we're pretty close to starting to plug the display in and get this all buttoned up. Like I said, the install is really not that hard. It just takes time. Okay, so this looks like a huge spaghetti mess right now, but we're actually really close to being done, ironically enough. So I'm a big believer in good cable management. So what I've done is any cable where I've got a lot of extra length, I've reused the zip ties that they came in. These are the 2 of the 4G antennas. My GPS antenna, so I've got 2 of the antennas over here, right here. I've got my GPS and the 3rd antenna, antenna here. This is my GPS one, and I've made sure to keep that out separate. And actually, you can tell by the plug that it's a little bit different. I've installed the adapter onto the original wiring harness, plug that in. I've got the connection here as well. This, like I said, this is going to plug into the USB. This goes in the back. So this really looks like a mess right now, but it's really close. I've also made sure that I've bound up all the rest of my cables, so when I can push all of these pieces back in, they go back in really cleanly, even though it doesn't look like it right now. Like I said, the one thing you can tell the GPS antenna differently is that it's not an angled connection, it's a straight connection. But I made sure to keep that separate because I want to make sure to have the right antenna on the right connection. So at this point, everything is at the point where we can start to plug it in to the back of the unit here. So you want to pull all the covers off off the back, and as you see, they really will only go into one place. So you've got, the blue plug is an 8-pin, so 2 rows of 4. So you look at the back and go, well, okay, so there's that spot right there. Okay, you got this guy. Okay, so 2 rows of 5. Well, that really kind of only goes in one spot and goes right there. Okay, so as you put all these in, they really kind of only go in one spot as you go through them all, right? So this is where you're going to start taking all of these and start plugging them in. Now, don't forget, off your original wiring harness, which is a little hard to find right now in all of this mess, and the original wiring harness is also your antenna as well. So don't forget the antenna. So we've got your primary bundle, which is going to go in right here. So that's in. Okay, so all of these just snap into one place as you go, which really isn't a big deal. So it's really easy. It's really easy to find as you just key all of these in, one at a time, one at a time, one at a time as you go through, and then you'll screw on all of your antenna ones as well. Now, I've kept the the dedicated USB, this guy right here. I've kept it all wrapped up. Wrapped up and tight because it's going to plug into that USB plug off the primary harness. So that's going to go up here. So let's get that in as well. I'm going to attach the antenna, the radio antenna last, just because that cable's a little bit short. But you pull all the red covers off and screw all the rest of your antenna in. So you'll screw them all in. Check all the rest of your connections. Your CAN bus connection will go here as well. So this is your standalone CAN bus, or it'll hang out, it's an antenna, it'll hang out in the back, so that's in as well. So now all I need to do is just get these covers off, get the antennas all on, and then start to feed all this cable back in place really, really neatly. And again, don't forget the USB connection as well. So antenna, your antennas, your radio antenna, USB connection, and feed it all back in. So that should be the key parts of this, and then getting good cable management and getting it all pushed back in the right places. So I'm going to get my antennas on, and then I'm going to feed it back in, and I'll show you the net result. Okay, so we've gone from spaghetti mess to organized spaghetti mess. So we've got everything connected. You can see the CAN bus is connected. You got your primary connection coming off all of your original wiring harness here. All the antennas, the USB is correct. All the rest of the antennas are in. And you could always use like a wrench and tighten these a little bit if you wanted. They're metal connections, so you can sink them down pretty tight if you wanted. The USB is in, and the USB is connected to the primary, that primary USB connection off the wiring harness. You've got the original OEM antenna that's also plugged in as well, and all of my other connection plugs up above. So I also chose to route the antenna wires upwards since all of them are coming down from above, so that would keep them from having to make an extra bend right here at the bottom. Maybe unnecessary, maybe not. Okay. So as we flip this around, and like I said, depending on your circumstances, you might have a lot more connections or different connections than what I have. If you've got an aftermarket stereo, you're installing the backup camera, for example, or other things. And this car doesn't have the backup camera in it. But I've also, with the Avin 2, I had the backup camera in a different E46 M3, and it makes a world of difference. Just unreal, the difference to be able to see out of the back. So if you're watching this before you buy this, I would strongly recommend getting the backup camera. The wiring isn't hard. It's just a matter of wiring it into the tail, running it all the way up, and running it up through the sideboards, up through the dash, and so on. I've done it once already. I'm not doing it with the Avin 3 in this particular case or for this model. So now we've got all of our wiring. So now what we want to do is, first of all, make sure that that your vent wire is up and available, not trapped behind or pinned, anything else like that. And then make sure all the rest of your wiring will fit back in here. And I'm just gonna gently guide all of this back into place, because in this case, without the body of the original stereo unit, which had the drive in it and all the rest of that, there's actually going to be a pretty fair amount of open void space. Now, the nice thing also with having the vents out is that you can get your hand in and over the top to feed the rest of this in and slowly guide this back into place. So that's an older adapter wire that this car had in earlier, so I'm just going to get that in and out of the way. So you can see I slowly just feed all this back in, and it feeds in, feeds in, feeds in. There's little pressure clips on the bottom of the display that feed in, and bang, we're all the way in and flush. Now, with the vents out, I can get my hand in through the top and guide the rest of this wiring out of the way, make sure that it's not in the way for the vent when I reinstall that next. But, and I don't have a lot of tension pulling down on my antennas to pull them down. They've got enough loose wire that they're going to stay in place. So there's a ton of extra space now back behind here that was not there before because of just the shape and design of the head unit. But as you can see, it's in. The other thing I really like about this that I experienced with the Avin 2 and in the other E46 M3 is I really like the design choices, the button styles, the font on the buttons and the like. Look OEM. I had people who thought that the Avin 2 and the other E46 M3 was original. They were like, 2004 had an Android system in it? No, not exactly. Okay, so we've got our USB cables that are run over to the glove box. We've got our vent installed here. What we'd want to do is get this settled in, and you can see it wants to push out a little bit, which means I just need to get a little bit better, there we go, a little bit better cable management back behind it so it sits in here nice and tight. There, and the screws will secure it down as well. So I'll want to put this in, put the vent back in, secure it down with the screws, get this all reinstalled. But what I'm going to do beforehand is, before I button it all up, we're actually going to test it. So let me get the drive installed and plugged in over on the glove box so it's in. And I'm going to do that step. Then we're going to come back, we'll power the car up, make sure that everything is working, we've got sound, we've got everything else, and it's working great. Okay, so everything's plugged in and good to go. It's all installed. If you said to yourself, hey, you forgot the SIM adapter, you're right. I did forget that. It was sitting here in my center console. So I pulled the display back out, plugged it back in. I'm not actually going to put a SIM card in this car, but I installed it anyway and then just slid it all back into place, made sure all my cables were back in place. So at this point, we're completely plugged in and ready to go. So let's go ahead and power the system up and we'll walk through this. Get to hear the car beeping a little bit. What I really like about Avin and what I really like about their design choices is I flip my lights on and you can see the colors. All the font and the colors match. I really like this amber color. It's one of the things about BMWs I like a lot in comparison to other manufacturers that have different colors. I really like this amber. So the fact that it matches means a lot to me, and I think it's a really cool choice. So as you look at this, you can see that it's up and running. It's a touch screen, so you can go through and you can manipulate by hand. We've got volume control. So that's working great. I said being a touchscreen, and let me kill music here. Using touchscreen, you can go through all your different options, and also as well, being that it's an Android system, you can also run Android apps too, which is really cool. That you can go through and treat it just like an Android system. You can browse through everything that's running. You can see there's a lot of stuff running right at the moment. You can run navigation, you can run movies, you can play all kinds of different things. But I really like that. I really think it's really cool and how you can upgrade your system and have it look basically factory. So, excuse me. So at this point, we're basically done. Configuring for Wi-Fi, setting up for if you wanted to have cellular and Bluetooth and what apps you want to run and all that sort of stuff, we'll probably cover in a future video of just walking through all the different functionality. But as is, you can see we're up and running, which is fantastic. All we need to do is reinstall the vent, get that back into place. Be really gentle putting it back into place, put the 2 screws in and put your trim back on, and you're all good to go. So hopefully this installation was easy for you. And like I said, I'll probably cover a future plan to walk through all the functionality. Okay, I just wanted to show one last shot of it all back together. The trim is back in. You put this piece in first. It lays over the top after you put in the 2 screws, vents in, those 2 screws, this piece in, and then your side piece goes in, and you can just kind of gently bang those posts back in. If the clips or the little secure clips that the posts go into are really beat up and mangled, you can replace them. Obviously, you'd have to plan for that beforehand and have the parts on hand. I'll put the part numbers in the link for the video and where to see them. But as you can see, it's all installed, and I'm really excited about this. For example, the one thing that came with this kit, but I can't demonstrate right now, is the TPMS system. So your tire pressure monitoring system. I can't actually demonstrate that because they're not installed. Now you can see the screen, which is really kind of cool because depending on the model of your car or year, you may have the TPMS light down here on your lower dash, but all it is just a dumb light. So if you have a tire that's low, the light will just come on and you'll know you have a tire low. This TPMS system will actually show actual pressure and everything else and temperature and what's going on with your tires. Now, it will require, if you get the kit, you do have to get the adapters or the sensors that get mounted in your tires. You'll actually have to take your car to a tire shop to have them take your tires off, put those sensors on, and put your tires back on. That's not something you can do here in your garage. Obviously, well, at least in my garage. Obviously, that would be a really cool function to be able to have. I do have the kit, I just don't have it installed yet, so I can't demonstrate it. There's also a protective plastic sheet over the top of the screen right now. The kit comes with a protective film you can put over the top. So you want to pull this sheet off. You want to pull this sheet off and put the cover on. Be really clean and careful as you lay it on so you don't get any bubbles or anything else like that. But all in all, this looks fantastic. And with the exception of, you know, modern technology and everything that comes with it, this looks like it should have been here in the first place. I mean, the trim designs match, the colors match, the buttons match, everything else match. What a great upgrade to put in your car. And a lot of technology. And like I said, there's many functions in this. It'd be like handing somebody a computer, which is, you know, essentially what this is, being an Android system. And then there's a million apps you can install. There's a million settings you can go through and all the different things you can go through. You can change your navigation, whether you want to use Cigic or use Google or use the Here app. And those are all choices that you can make as you can customize this to be exactly how you want it to be. But as you can see, the install's done and really isn't that hard. Doing this video and doing the install takes a lot longer than actually the effort itself. This is one of the easier installs that you can do. So if you have any questions, make sure to let me know. All right, back inside after doing the installation. I always reserve the right to make changes as I go. There's one additional thing that I changed. I was talking about the TPMS system earlier. So you can actually get a couple of different setups from Avin. You can get the TPMS system, which includes the internal sensor as well, or just the external sensor. The kit I have is just the external sensor. You don't have to take it to a tire shop to get the internal sensor installed. They're just basically like really big valve cover valve caps that you screw on. And you screw those on, you put the sensor for the TPMS system, you plug it in the back of your display. Please note in the directions for the TPMS sensor, it says that you want to try to minimize it from other electronic interference. Don't wrap it around anything else. So the sensor, that sensor, I pushed as far back as possible back behind the display to hopefully get away from any interference. So I did add that after the fact once I've started to put everything away and I was prepared to take the car to get the sensors installed, and I realized I didn't have that kit. I just had the external kit. So I went ahead and reinstalled that, or installed it later. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a shout. Look below in the comments for links to everything that I've installed today, tools and recommendations and the like. If you like what you've seen, please click subscribe. I always try to answer as many comments as I can if there's any questions or anything else like that. And I hope this install goes for easily for you as it did for me. And I look forward to seeing you on my next video.